Welcome to the Hardcore MBA podcast with your host, Erlend, Bakke. Would you like to have a free copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Never Work Again? All you have to do is rate, review, and subscribe to Hardcore MBA podcast on iTunes and email us a screenshot of your review to erlend@mroutsource.com.
Hello, welcome to Hardcore MBA. This is not a robot. This is me, Erlend, signing in from Oslo, Norway. I just flew in here from London, England, and at the moment it's a lot of back and forth to London and Oslo. Got things going on both places, but today I'm really excited because it is all about becoming superhuman. You know, we all have our superheroes. Like, some people are a Batman type of person, and some people are a Superman type of person. Maybe you're a Spider-Man type of person, or a Catwoman. What do I know? But today, it's all about how you can see your own superpowers and how actually you can feed, train, and mentor your body so that you can perform at the maximum potential. The thing is, we have been given these bodies, and when we treat them and give them the right types of stimulation, everybody in this world and life can become superhuman. And that's why I invited Hari Kalymnios here. That is not spelled Harry, it is actually Hari, which he decided at a very young age that he wanted his Hari name to be spelled a little bit differently. That's probably also why he is an entrepreneur. Now, Hari is an expert at health, goal setting, and he's got something very special called the B.E.A.T model, and he's going to be talking to us about this here today. He speaks all over the world. He is an author and an awesome guy. I just did a really cool event with him here in, well, not here, but in London a couple of weeks ago. So, Hari, how are you doing? Where are you signing in from?
I'm fantastic, Erlend. I am signing in from North London.
North London.
And it's quite interesting. I love the intro. I'm just looking at a kind of an edited photo that a friend of mine gave for my birthday of my face on the new Superman's body. So it's quite funny. So that's my superhero of choice. When you are questioning the audience on who they would choose, mine is always being Superman.
So what can we do to become superhuman?
Well, let me just give you some background, really, and why all this came about. It's really because I discovered as an entrepreneur a few years ago, when I started to take this leap into doing things for myself. I worked in the corporate world for many years, and I realized that in order for me to do everything I wanted to do, I had to find more energy, more vitality in my life, and more time, which we all know we can't find more time, and you've got to just kind of take time from elsewhere. So what I started doing was going to lots of events and seminars and noticing what other people who were really successful were doing. And I noticed patterns in their behavior, that certain individuals, you know, this person and this person and this person would be doing one particular thing. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. Let me see if that works for me. And this happened with several different items. And I started integrating different things into my life, noticing whether they worked for me or not, keeping the things that worked and binning the things that didn't work. And eventually, after several years of doing this, I decided that there must be some kind of easy pattern to explaining this to other people. And so I looked at everything I'd integrated into my life, and I'd changed a number of different things over that time. We're talking like, I think in the first month alone, I think I made 30 small changes to my life. But eventually it became more like 60 or 70. And I just kind of grouped them up and realized that there were 4 key areas in order to really live with the health, vitality, and energy that we all deserve. Because, you know, like you probably know as well as anyone else out there listening, that at the beginning, you are your business. And if you're not on point, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, you're not really going to be the best person and entrepreneur that you can be. And if you're not working, you're not earning, especially at the beginning. So that's kind of really how it came about, if that explains a bit of background.
So it's actually really interesting, because one of the things I'm working on right now is because I actually think that people that want to start a business, be successful at business, they should be going and doing a sort of prepping course. So basically, I've interviewed lots of Navy SEALs and high performance individuals, and what I'm really interested in is like how did they become successful? How did they train? And basically, Navy SEALs, the reason why they're so successful at what they do is because they've done like thousands and thousands of hours of training, and when they're not on a mission, they're training.
Yeah,
right? They're doing all these different things, because if they don't have like muscle memory and the right mindset and the right physiology, then they can't perform at the high level when they need to. So it's really, really interesting. So
absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, is that it doesn't happen by accident. It's the hours and hours that you put into things that really yield the results. And one of the things that I have to tell clients when I see them, or if I'm giving a speech, it's really that a lot of people nowadays are coming in for quick fixes and they want a solution on tap, and they don't want to put the effort in. And unfortunately, you don't get that washboard stomach just by accident. I'm kind of blessed physically in a way, in that I've always been of an athletic build, but yet it's still not an accident. Like, getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to head to the gym is not an accident, And I think people just want the easy way out. And one of the things, I tell them right from the bat is that, I'm not going to be doing anything to them. I can't do anything to them. I will work with them and help them bring out the things they need to. But really, they need to put the effort in, and it needs to be a consistent effort on anything. So having some kind of training program like you talk about, absolutely.
It's really interesting in terms of how do you actually create change in people. I was actually just out for lunch with a buddy of mine. He's a doctor, and he was telling me about how he'd been buying funds. What was it called? Like just a managed fund, basically, and how he'd made money on it. And I've read a lot about investing, and I just copied like what the best do. And I was like, yeah, but you should really look at just index funds, because this is how you set. And I wasn't really getting through to him.
Yeah.
Like I've done a lot of studying about investments, and I don't think he has. But he was doing what everybody else does, which is like try to buy when it's low and sell when it's when it's high. And I was kind of trying to tell him, like, you shouldn't really have that strategy. Just like invest the same amount every month over time. And of course, when there's blood in the streets, you could probably go buy like any company and you'll make a return. But I wasn't getting through to him. So.
No, well, absolutely. I mean, firstly, in that case, you have to understand that different people get motivated differently for change. So, you could have a smoker. They know it's not great to smoke. You don't need to convince them of that, because they know themselves. But, if you've got enough leverage on them, for example, you put, this is horrible, by the way, but you put a gun to their child's head and say, you smoke another cigarette and I'm going to pull the trigger, they're probably going to have the motivation to stop there and then.
Right.
So understanding that motivation, but change comes in different ways. Like at the very basic level, this is one of the examples we were given actually on the course recently that you and I ran, is that environmental level, where we try and make change at an environmental level, which is, someone is maybe a big drinker, you try and take them out of that environment that they drink, like the pub or the social circle that they're in. And that can lead to some change, absolutely. And anyone that's started to run a marathon knows that they can't be doing their 5 nights a week in the pub if they're going to do that marathon. So that's kind of one level. And then you've got another level above that, which is more of kind of the behavioural level, which is where things like the Fitbit and all of those things come into play, where they try and change your behaviour. So they give you a tool, an app, whatever, to then monitor things, which is great. And then you can change your behaviour because you've got this feedback mechanism.
And does that work? Like I've gone through several devices now over the couple of years, and is there any research saying like that these things work?
Well, you see, I think what it's doing eventually, and I haven't got really conclusive proof of this, but just from my own suppositions, is really what that does when you change your behaviour. Ultimately, it changes the levels higher up. So if you really the higher up levels, above kind of behavior, you've got your skills and capabilities, but above that is really where most change lasting will happen, which is at your values and beliefs. So by changing someone's behavior so that they are walking more, let's say, they then will change their belief that they actually may be someone who can, lose weight, someone who can walk 10 minutes at lunchtime, for example. So I think ultimately for it to last, you need to be able to, it needs to feed into changing the behavior of that person, the belief of that person rather. Because in my experience anyway, when you make changes lower down, if they do stick, there's always a kind of an internal conflict, because you still have a belief somewhere in you that, you can't do this, or that you are a smoker, or that you are XYZ type of person. So even though you may be behaving in a way which doesn't show that, if you still believe that, there'll be an internal conflict. So there'll always be a struggle, which means, someone was asking me the other day about discipline and willpower, and saying I must be very disciplined to maybe eat the way I do or anything like that. And I say, well, it's not discipline at all, because discipline, just like willpower, wanes. It doesn't last. And this has been proven, especially when it comes to willpower, that wanes throughout the day. You have more willpower if you've got something in your stomach, for example, than if you're feeling hungry. And there was an interesting study on judges giving parole hearings out to people, and those people who were kind of closer to lunchtime were almost certain not to get parole, as their kind of decision-making power and everything else kind of reduced. So really, once you kind of recognize that it's not about discipline, it's not about willpower, and it becomes more about habit and more about belief, it's not a challenge for me to eat in a way I want to, or exercise or do anything, because I have fundamentally shifted beliefs. Just like some of your listeners out there now may have loved when they were children, certain type of sweet. I can't like sherbet type things or whatever. Now, if they go into a newsagent's, they're not thinking about that. They don't, it's not in their consciousness at all. So they don't have to be disciplined to say no to that sweet. And that's kind of the level you want to get to, where it doesn't become a discipline or willpower. It becomes just part of your identity, really, which is the higher level.
Yeah. A good friend of mine says that once you, like with personal development, if you don't notice it anymore, like if you don't even think about smoking, then you've transcended it. Then you've like moved beyond it. But if you go to the store and you still see the cigarette and you want the cigarette and stuff like that, then you haven't transcended the problem. So the important thing in all personal growth and development is actually to move through and past it. So you no longer see it. So
my dad, as an example, he was a smoker for 30 odd years. In fact, it was heavily ingrained into his identity, his belief, and everything. And around 15 years ago, he quit smoking. Let's say I don't really use that term very very often, but he ceased to be a smoker, and he actually had his last cigarette, funnily enough, on the morning of his triple heart bypass, I believe.
Wow.
But the next day or that afternoon, it's like a complete shift in identity. He had no cravings, no withdrawal, no nothing. You can put him in a room full of smokers. He'll have no desire whatsoever to pick up a cigarette. I've never once heard him long for a cigarette. It was a complete shift in identity. And so even though 30 years of smoking, so the point of this story is that even if you've been doing something a long time, you can literally change those kind of synapse connections in your brain, which will then shift you into a completely different area where, like you say, you're kind of moving past this kind of this need and this want, and it's not even in your consciousness anymore. Really interesting.
I was actually writing down some things today that I have found challenging as an entrepreneur. So these are some things that might maybe everybody listening, or some people, not everybody listening, but these topics might be some things that other people have challenges with also. So I'm just going to read through the list, and then I'm going to ask you how we can change those habits. So uncertainty, fear, going out of the tribe and being different, being in the wrong social circles, rejection, failure, dealing with delayed gratification, distractions, and shiny objects, anxiety, loss of self-esteem, health problems, lack of sleep, burnout, overwhelm, scarcity mindset, busyness instead of being smart, money problems, stress, team problems, partnership failure. So like, just the reason why I read those is because like these are things that entrepreneurs are challenged by.
Yeah, and not just entrepreneurs as well at that.
Yes.
But for example, I wrote down a couple of things because there was quite a long list there. But let's take rejection, for example. So we all have kind of fears of rejection at some stage or another. And I remember once working with a client who was actually wanting to be an actress. Now, if you know, obviously, anything about actors and actresses, they're going to get a lot of rejection. And one of the things that really helps me is just to reframe it. And by reframing that, it means putting a different meaning on what rejection means. So I suggested to her at the time, and this I think I got originally probably from someone like Tony Robbins or someone like that. And really it was, I feel rejected if I don't get the outcome I want and I learn nothing in the process. And by doing that, what you're doing is you're putting the control back onto yourself and not onto the other person. Because the other person is going to say no. Chances are you ask enough people something, they're going to say no, you're going to get rejected. But if for you to feel total rejection is that you learn nothing in the process, that would be very challenging because you're always going to learn something in that process. You're going to learn a way of not approaching. You're going to learn that they're not the right person for you. You're going to learn that you're going to need to do a better pitch. And so just kind of, I know it sounds quite trite to say it, it's quite simplistic, but one of my kind of guiding philosophies and many teachings is about keeping things simple and not to look for the overcomplicated things. And just because something's simple, not to kind of dismiss it out of hand. So something like, rejection or failure, looking at it that way, understanding that when you fail, it's not really a failure. And one of the terms that I love really resonated with me was that the word fail just means first attempt in learning. Or following attempt in learning if you've done it before. But and I know these things sound quite like simplistic to say, but just that little shift in mindset can be the difference between everything, because we're not born knowing all we need. We're not born knowing how to talk. We're not born, it takes us 2 years to start even saying the odd word. So we're not born knowing how to walk. We're not born with any of these natural skills. We develop them over time. And one of the biggest changes that I made in the last few years, which really helped me, and I'm sure a lot of your readers do anyway, is taking time to pick up books again and read books. And when you start reading books, things like, The Talent Code by, I think, Daniel Coyle, or Bounce by Matthew Syed, and you realise this idea of world-class natural talent is a complete myth. Yes, there is talent out there, but you don't become world-class by mere talent alone. And just the amount of dedication and effort that it takes to get to somewhere. Reading books, reading biographies, stories of people who have failed over and over, and realising that it's not failure if you don't stop there and you continue.
So I think one of the challenges for me is you go learn something, and then you start Monday hits, and then you're in the normal week, and you're like, oh, I remember that thing from the seminar, but I'm not really able to implement it. How do you go from intellectually understanding something to embodying it?
Yeah, I think it takes a bit of time, and I think also it's important not to try and do too much all at once. So another guiding principle of mine is baby steps. I mean, people can come to these seminars and they can get all these great ideas, and then I've been guilty of it in the past as well. You get overwhelmed. You want to do this and you want to do that, and you just don't know where to start. Or you do start and you manage to do all 3 of them or 4 of them. But it becomes too overwhelming for the system. And over time, they'll probably drop away, which is why, even though I made 30 odd changes in that first month, I was able to do that. But I don't necessarily say to other people to do that many changes in a month, because I would just stick with one thing, stick to it for 30 days or so, once you get your head around that, do the next thing. And just integrate it into your life. Like, so whether that's, for me, one of the things I tell people when it comes to, say, exercising is, and I still do it to this day, and I did it when I was at work, is scheduling that in the calendar. Literally putting in every single time you go to a gym session or do something like that, have that as a repeat thing, because then it will constantly be in your subconscious when you open up that calendar, and it's in there to remind you to do that thing. And you're not always going to do it. I didn't always go when I said I was going to go, and then I would actually delete out the ones I didn't, so that I could have a little record of when I did. But also it means that no one else is going to put anything in. If someone says, oh, can you have a meeting then? And you can also have it some other time, you're going to say, actually, let's reschedule it for another time because I've already got an appointment, really important appointment. So I think the key is really is just doing things simply. When I go to seminars, I tend to, I scribble the notes and everything, but then they're all a bit kind of higgledy-piggledy sort of thing. I'm not really the neatest person. But what I do with those seminar notes, and what I did in my degree as well quite often, is I would then rewrite those notes. And I have like a nice moleskin book, which has pretty much all the seminar notes, lots of colour and everything else like that. And having that kind of then leads things to stick a little bit more. And then also I then review that from time to time. So it might be even months or years later, I might say, oh, that idea was great. And now I'm able to implement and use it, and not feeling the necessity to do it when you learn it. It might not be relevant for you, and to trust that the things that are relevant for you will come up when they need to come up. I don't know if that answers anything, but
absolutely. For me, what's worked is journaling. Yeah. And I've actually changed that from like evening to morning, because I was noticing. Like sometimes I would do it like after the workday. I would do it like 5-6 o'clock. But what I was noticing was that I was getting quite stressed out about it. Yeah. So I was like, I was like basically like finished with the day, and then I had to do my journal. So that was actually a problem for me. And then I spoke to some very successful friends of mine, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, just do it in the morning." I used to do evenings, but yeah, just do it in the morning. It's better. And I'm like, huh. And I think like little changes like that, as you said, is really important. And of course, the other thing is like have a coach, and not only any coach, like a coach that actually follows up what you agree on, like a coach that is fairly structured and like takes notes and remembers what you talked about last, that asks you to send like an accountability form before the coaching call. Like there's a lot of coaches out there, but not that many coaches actually are good at the follow through and the follow up of their clients.
Yeah, I mean that's it. I always get my potential clients to fill out quite an in-depth kind of form and questionnaire, really to kind of get them thinking before they even come into a session that they actually really want to do the work, because it's going to be work. It's not me doing things to them. And I'm pretty good in terms of following up and taking those notes and really being on their case with things, because that's what it's about, really. It's about having that, and that's why they come, is that having that accountability and paying really to be kind of held accountable for the things that they agree to do, which is important, that they agree to do them and not you as a coach thrust it on them to do, because it won't work that way. But I mean, the thing with journaling, again, this was one of the things that I noticed. All these successful people were journaling. I've done some level of journaling since I was 10 years old, but it was really very sporadic, and it was often when I was kind of in a kind of a bit of a rut, let's say. And so I would go like months or years without writing in it. But I've got this journal from the age of 10. But in terms of on a day-to-day basis, one important thing is not to give yourself a hard time over things and feeling like you have to do things. So one of the things I talk about in my book, The Thought Gym, one of the chapters is all about language, because how we describe our events and our obligations and everything else really determines how we feel about them. So if we say, I have to do the ironing now, that creates a feeling of that you don't have a control over it, that it's something that you're not wanting to do. So and it sounds so silly to say it, but if your listeners give this a go over the next week or so, they'll realise the difference. But saying something like, I want to do the ironing, I get to do the ironing, I choose to do the ironing because then it shows that it's a choice. So sometimes with my journal, I use this thing called the 5-minute journal, which you may have heard of. I know Tim Ferriss raves about it, but it's actually created by a couple of friends of mine, and it's doing phenomenally well at the moment. But what I love about it, as it says on the tin, it takes 5 minutes, literally about 3 minutes in the morning, about 2 minutes in the evening, and it's quite structured. So you just say 3 things that you're grateful for, 3 things that would make the day great, 2 kind of affirmations, and then that's it for the day. And then in the evening, you write 3 things that went really well that day or were amazing, and then 2 things that you would improve on. And that doesn't take very much time. And I do that along with some other gratitude lists that I do in the evening. But sometimes I don't do the journal, and I don't give myself a hard time about that. I just move on to the next day, and just allow that to finish where it finished. And so I think that's important for a lot of people, where they feel like so obligated that they have to do something that they feel really terrible when they don't do it. Now, obviously, there's a limit to this, because if you go like weeks and months without eating well or exercising or doing whatever it is that you've promised yourself, it's going to have an effect. But yeah,
I use this system called Notebook. It's you can buy it in the store. It's got lots of pages, and I just use a pen.
Exactly. Yeah, good old pen and paper. Like for your productivity, your to-do list, just having a good old pen and paper often is clearly enough. Some apps are great out there. I tend to be a fan of Google Keep for just things that I need to kind of have front of mind at some point, because then I can just jot that around, whether I've got my computer or whether I've got my phone. And I do like Evernote as well for certain other notes, but just general day-to-day, like pen and paper, my goal stuff, my journaling, my gratitude log, that's all pen and paper, just simple.
I actually realized that the reason why I started journaling in a book was because I actually figured out I couldn't write anymore. Like, I never wrote pretty.
Yeah.
But now my writing was just horrible.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing now is I'm actually taking time to write it properly,
yeah,
do it properly. So I'm relearning how to write, basically, because I spent so much time on in front of screens, and it's so nice just to spend some time on the pen and paper. I think our thought processes and our emotions are different when we use pen and paper.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, something I heard, and again, I don't know if I can ever substantiate it, but is that the kind of digital typed word is read with the head, whereas the written word is read with the heart. And so you have this kind of more of an emotional link to physically writing things, which is why I suggest when people do goal setting, they write it by hand rather than type it. And even when you're kind of on stage and you're presenting, I heard this actually probably from T. Harv Eker, so he's very good on stage, so I take it as read. But yeah, if it's digital, if it's kind of typewritten text, it's read with the head, whereas if it's handwritten, it's read with the heart. So I definitely subscribe to the idea of writing it. It's a bit more personal. There's just a bit more personal interaction between you and the pen and the paper. I think there's something that happens there, which doesn't really happen when you type into this device. So
we need to do morning routines. How do you start the day?
Yeah, again, this was something I observed from looking at other people, and I do this. It took over time to do this, so it wasn't all at once. But I used to be like everyone else, or not everyone else, but a lot of people I knew, which is wake up, kind of jump in the shower, grab some breakfast, and then head to the office. And over time, I've integrated different things. So normally I would typically wake up. So in an ideal world, that would be about 6 o'clock, or it would be at 6, and then read just while I'm kind of in the bathroom, let's say. I will just read a chapter of a book from Ogmandino. So I've been reading that same book for like 4.5, 5 years now. I just read a different chapter from each of those books. Then I will do some meditation, so about 15 minutes of meditation, followed by writing in the 5-minute journal, then having some lemon water, jumping on a rebounder for 10, 15 minutes, doing some goal visualization and some incantations. And then, depending, I may head to the gym. So all of that takes about an hour. And then I'll head to, say, the gym, or go to a yoga class or do something like that, come back, and then I start the whole process of juicing and smoothie making, listening to podcasts such as this one. So again, that was a reframe. I used to hate doing all the washing up and everything like that, but now I reframed it. It's actually my learning time, educational time. So I spend a bit of time doing the juicing and the smoothie. So typically, if I do all of that, it may be 3 hours. So it may be 6 till 9, and then I'm ready to kind of start the day at 9. I appreciate not everyone can do that, and I wouldn't suggest it. Like I said, I just started looking at things that made sense to me. So the juicing made sense to me, the meditation made sense to me, all of this, and I just integrated it. And I think I had each one for like at least 6 months before I added another one in. And I went from like getting up at like say 7:30 or whatever, just like 15 minutes earlier over a period of years to get to that point.
I actually started with 5 minutes of pranayama meditation, basically focusing on my breath. Yeah. And I started just with 5 minutes in the morning, and then my whole sort of morning routine kind of started with just like that one practice. And I just made it important. The way I get stuff done is like I'll make something important, more important than other things. And I actually had to, in my big crash in 2010, I actually had to change a lot of my habits because they were causing a lot of discomfort. Too much discomfort. Some discomfort's okay, but too much discomfort. And I just started with that one thing, and now I have like my whole morning routine. And I don't spend as long as you.
Like I said, that's an ideal day. So sometimes I don't do it every day. Like, what did I miss today? Definitely didn't do the lemon water, and I don't think I wrote in the journal actually today. So, but the thing is, what you do there is like that pranayama breathing or whatever it might have been is a keystone habit. And I wrote a blog article about this as well. But like something to get more done in the day is so simple. But if you don't do it, and I'm sure you do it, but if any of the listeners don't do this, it's make your bed. So by making your bed, you're kind of completing the first task of the day. And it sounds really simple, but it's a keystone habit or cornerstone habit. And it means it trickles into everything else. And people will find that in all walks of life. So when people start to exercise more, they start to eat better, even though it's not something that was a focus necessarily. And so these habits are like kind of dominoes, and they kind of stack up on each other. And, start small is always a philosophy. Like you started with 5 minutes of breathing. I started originally for my meditation a few years ago of doing 10 breaths, literally counting in and out to 10. And I did that for like 2 or 3 weeks. Then I went to 20, 30, eventually got to a minute or two, and then eventually built up to like 15 minutes. But it was months of doing that rather than, I've never sat down in all my life. Now I'm going to sit down for an hour and meditate.
One thing I've noticed is like, first of all, in the beginning, it was so hard to do. Like there was so much resistance in me to just doing like 5 minutes for myself. That was just like, it was so incredibly difficult. And now, like after many years of like just stacking winning habits, I find like, I came to the end of the day and like everything I did today was positive. It means like I didn't react positively to everything, but like in terms of like habits and adding value and being positive and like just like all these things that I like. And the thing is like you start with this like little snowball. And then it starts, it adds up and up and up and up, and it's the same with like negative stuff. So if you feel depressed, if you feel negative, if you feel like life isn't happening the way you want it to, then those are like habitual habits that have compounded over a long time. Yeah. So to like shift that over, you need to like start stacking little habits, and eventually like the dark stuff will still be there. It just won't be dominant.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, one of the important things to know about habits is that you can't break a habit. You can't stop a habit. You can only replace it. So you can replace it with a new and empowering habit. And actually, one of the first videos I give on my website is all around habit change and a 7-step process to changing your habits and also recognizing them. Because ultimately, like I said before, discipline, willpower, none of that really lasts. And we're really a collection of our habits. And comes from our deep subconscious programming. So I have habits which are still present, even though they don't really manifest anymore. So if I slip up, for example, like I've been writing a gratitude log now for like 4.5 years. Again, it was one of those things I heard someone mention. I decided to try it for 30 days. 4.5 years later, I'm still doing it. But then if I slip for some reason, like for a few days, or maybe I go away and I don't take the book with me or whatever it might be, things will change, because sometimes we don't notice that what we've done has been working or doing things. And you think, oh, well, I feel great now. So, why do I need to do this and this? And then you stop doing it. And before you know, you're kind of drifting back to the old habit. And they've done these, can't remember what book it was. Maybe it was The Habit Factor, or one of those books where they literally showed that those pathways are still there that created those old habits in people. But yeah, you need to then build even stronger pathways over them.
So they never go away?
Yeah, no, they don't go away. You just replace them. You can't, so, you can't like kind of stop someone, say, smoking without replacing that with a different, more empowering habit. That might be the habit.
So what would that be like for smoking?
Well, it depends on the reason that person's smoking. For example, that person smoking might be smoking because they want to feel relaxed, So you might create a habit of taking 10 deep breaths when you start to feel that way, instead of taking a cigarette. Or it might be that you change the way that a person thinks. So your mood and your state are really created by 3 things. And I explained this at the event that we ran a couple of weeks ago. And really, it's what you pay attention to, the meaning you assign to what you pay attention to, and also the physical actions that your body takes. So when you're, say, depressed, and sometimes I feel down, I'm not by any means always up, but having that awareness and say, actually, where is my attention right now? What meaning am I giving this? What meaning am I assigning to this? And can I then change that meaning? Because that ultimately is a choice. You choose to think one way or the other. And I know a lot of people out there might be thinking that's not true and be challenged by that. But when you really realize that, it's very liberating. And I remember where I was when I kind of first realized that your kind of emotions, in a way, or how you feel, it can be a choice based on what you decide to focus on, what you pay attention to. So I was walking down the street on the way to the tube, and I think I was listening to Bob Proctor at the time, and he said this concept, and I'd probably heard it dozens of times before, like many of your listeners would have heard it, but it didn't resonate for whatever reason. And then at that time, it was a cloudy day, as it always is in London, or quite often. And, a lot of people go, it's a miserable day, and therefore they're not happy, or whatever it might be. But actually just choosing to recognize that I'm not going to have my mood dictated by the weather. I'm going to focus and put attention on something that's going to make me feel uplifted and excited, and I'm going to move my body in a way that's going to help that. If you're depressed, one of the, and I don't know much about clinical depression or anything like that, but I know that exercise has been shown to be more effective in treating depression than almost anything else. So moving that body, because everything's connected, your mind, your body, everything. I'm not saying that it's easy. It may be simple on the surface, but it's not necessarily easy. But with practice, it gets easier. Like I said, we don't learn to walk when we come out of the womb. We don't learn to speak when we come straight out of the womb. It takes time. But knowing these things, knowing these skills, these tools, the things that I've been learning and I teach, helps. It helps, and then you can create change over time. I mean, it might, I know Tony Robbins talks about it takes an instant, you can change in an instant, which in a way is true. Like my dad is an example of that, but it takes maybe 30 years to build up to that instant.
Yeah.
I
often think about like something is better than nothing, like taking some action, like, contacting that web designer, or, going to that meeting, or like, if you come to, like, in the end, success is just like those little habits that you just did.
Absolutely. Never try, never know. It's one of the things I've got hanging up above my bathroom in these Chinese writing that I picked up when I was traveling years and years ago. And that's the case, that all you know is that if you take no action, or if you do what you've always done, as they say, you'll always get what you've always gotten. And by taking action, you might not get the result that you want. But then what you do get is you get feedback on whether that's working or not. And then you can adjust the action you take until you get the feedback that shows that you're going in the right direction. and that's the thing really is do something. Like, and I say to people are like, oh, I can't do exercise. I'm not like a physical or personal trainer, by the way, in case your listeners think that. But if I'm telling someone about, maybe doing some exercise and they're thinking they've got to kind of run like a half marathon or a 10K, it's like, no, just take action where you can take action. If all you can do is walk around the block once, that's your thing. That's all you're going to do for the next week, 2 weeks. Then you're going to walk between lampposts and then run between lampposts. So then you just got to start where you start,
I actually think it's a really good idea to start slowly as well.
Absolutely.
Like, instead of doing like you said, like just go for a walk. Like if you don't exercise, then just start walking home from work.
Yeah.
Yes. I like moving. Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll bring a jogging suit to work and I'll change in the office and I'll jog home. That's
it's really important as well when you're looking at exercise. And I think I wrote a blog post, but I've got like 9 different criteria really that you need to look at when it comes to choosing an exercise, because often people will do an exercise because they think it's the thing to do. They'll go to the gym, but they don't really like the gym. That's not really.
It sucks, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, for some people,
unless you're doing classes or with other people and it's like a social thing. I mean, it's.
Well, that's boring. It. I mean, for me, the gym. I only started going to the gym when I started working, but I used to do a lot of stuff by myself in the gym, and then I wanted to start doing the gym in the morning. And what I realised was that I wasn't really a morning person, and I still classically am not a morning person, even though I might get up early. But what I realised was, okay, how can I make this? Or the question was how, and that's a really important question, is how can I make this a reality? How can I make this more possible? And what I determined was that in order for me to go to the gym in the morning and actually get some use out of it, I would have to shift from, going and doing my own thing to like going to a class, for example. And so by asking that question, how, it gives you more answers. So when it comes to exercising, I won't go through all the kind of things, but they all start with the letter S, whether that's what you're looking for is strength, size, stability, stamina, speed, skill, all of these. But one of the most important things is significance and how this meets your significance for an importance in of exercise. By that, what I mean is what is important to you in exercise. So is it that I know you do like martial arts and stuff, so it might be that you like a grading system, so you like to see progression through some sort of external grading system. It might be that you like company, whereas if you're a triathlete, maybe you like training alone but competing with other people. It might be that you want to have the ability to train inside and outside, that you need to be within 5 minutes of your office or work. It might so what is important to you, because it's going to be different for everyone. And if you realize that this stuff that you're doing doesn't meet those kind of significance levels, you're not going to keep it up. Pure and simple. The best exercise anyone can do is the one that they stick to. And you're more likely to stick to it if you enjoy it and it meets your levels of significance. And also I say spirit, and by spirit I mean does it enliven your spirit? Do you have fun with it? Or maybe does it kind of help you be connected to whatever it is you feel like you need to be connected to? So maybe you do yoga because you feel more connected spiritually that way, but it's not to be more metaphysical about it. It might just be as simple as, do you enjoy it, and does it enliven your spirit? So yeah.
I need to retract the gym sucks thing. I actually really enjoy the gym, but I prefer going to the gym when I know people there, when I'm talking to people, but sometimes people just, if you work in a team all the time and you want some alone time, then that can be an awesome thing to do.
Exactly. So having that awareness is always the first step in any change, in anything. It's like, okay, now I'm aware that actually I like the gym when I have that social aspect, when I'm really pushed, but I don't like it when, I don't know, I want to chill out and be by myself and people come up to me. So you got to understand that.
Okay, so there's a few of the morning things that I want to dip a little bit more into. So what was it? Can you just go through them really quickly again?
So reading my book, my meditation, my 5-minute journal, the lemon water, doing all the veg and smoothies, doing my rebounding and goal setting on the rebounding, or goal visualization on the rebounding, then some form of exercise, Yeah, I mean that's kind of it. And then obviously listening to podcasts. I may do some deep diaphragmatic breathing exercises as well.
So you're not reading the Daily Mirror or Sun or whatever the...
Oh God, no. One of the things that I took away from, and I tell you what, this was so challenging to me at the time, and it challenges everyone when I tell them this. But when I read the 4-Hour Work Week, I took a few things away from that. But one of the things that I took away definitely was this whole media fast. And he challenges you, Tim Ferriss challenges you to go 30 days, I think it is, without kind of media inputs. Like. And at the time I was like, that is crazy. You know, I'm not going to know what goes on in the world and blah, blah, blah. And I've got to say, it's a very rare occasion where I pick up a newspaper now, maybe once a month, but certainly not on a day-to-day basis. I mean, it's very, obvious in a way to say it, but like, if you want to get and feel and be like everyone else in the world, then yes, you do what everyone else is doing. But if that's not your example, and you know, if you're noticing people who are always moaning, overweight, stressed, tired, and you want to be like that, and I'm not saying that it's good or bad to be like that, it is just what it is, then fine, follow what they do and do the same thing. If you want to do the things that energize you and make you feel great about yourself, then find the people that you want to emulate and find out what they were doing. And so what they were doing was not, by and large, reading the papers or watching the news and doing all of this. And I stopped doing that. And I've got to say, I haven't suffered on account of it. You know, I still know what's going on in the world. The news that you need to know will find you somehow. But I don't know if you remember, we had those London riots a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I believe they started maybe on a Saturday night. Now, I didn't, like I said, at the time I wasn't reading the papers and any of this. And people were in a state of kind of fear and panic for like 2 or 3 days. The only reason I even found out about the riots, because a lot of the time when I was working at the time in the corporate world, I'd have headphones on, so I wouldn't have to listen to all the kind of gossip and everything else going around, so I could get my work done quicker and better. So I didn't know until I think the Tuesday afternoon that there were even these riots going on, until they started to close the office early so that we could go before all these people started rioting or whatever it was. And the thing is, the result would have been the same, yeah. But all that would have happened is that I would have spent 3 days living in kind of angst or fear or whatever it might be, whatever the emotion was for people. And so, yeah, I don't generally read the papers. If I do get news in, and sometimes I do, it's usually would be via an app in the middle of the day. So I wouldn't suggest that the first or last thing you do is get any kind of media consumption, because your brain, your unconscious mind, is very susceptible, both at the beginning and end of the day, to what goes into it. So you'll either think about it overnight or it'll be present on the subconscious level during the day. So if you do have to get your news in, and it's just because of interest's sake, I would suggest doing it in the middle of the day. I wouldn't suggest necessarily watching it, and I wouldn't suggest getting like the kind of daily free newspapers, because most of that's rubbish anyway. So if you're really interested in something, get something of high quality, and read that, but do it in the middle of the day rather than either side, I think. But yeah, I mean, my life is much better for not having it in, I've got to say.
I've had some funny experiences. I remember flying into Copenhagen, and when it was flooded, I remember I was in London as well. I flew into London the second day of the riots, and I took the train in, and I met my friend, and we were driving along, and then we saw like lots of police cars, and I was like, "Oh, what's going on?" He's like, "Oh, there's some riots going on." I was like, "Oh, is that dangerous? Should we be scared?" He's like, "No, they're fine. They're just like in central London. There's lots of police now, so it's okay." So I've had a few of those things.
Yeah, stuff can happen like that, like where you don't realise things. Like, I don't know, even like the other day where I had no idea that there was a train strike going on, and I rocked up to head down to Devon,
right?
And there were like no trains, or then I got stranded in Exeter. And the thing is that like you just deal with it.
Yeah.
Stuff is going to happen.
Actually, it makes life a lot more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, things are always going to happen in life that you can't plan, you can't foresee. And the more that you accept that, and that you accept that you're going to have to be able to kind of think on your feet a bit, deal with things, the better you'll become when those things crop up. So, it's not ideal sometimes. Like, you do want to do a bit of planning. Maybe if you're flying, you want to check the flights are still going, whatever. But But, sometimes when you don't look at the news, you are going to miss things. That's a given. But you just stick with it.
One thing for sure is I was in Venezuela during the coup by Chavez. And I remember sitting like in the living room, hearing gunshots and stuff, and watching it on TV. But I can tell you one thing, like, it was not scary. I was not scared at all. And on TV, it looked so bad. It looked really, really bad. And it was fine. We were fine,
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, like, the news sells itself on making things really kind of sensationalist and scary. And it's not to say that bad things aren't happening out in the world, because they are. But you're always going to be at the mercy of who's reporting it and the kind of slant they want and grabbing your attention. So you just got to be conscious of that fact, because it might be that the people on the ground have a completely different perception about what's going on.
The thing is, and my perspective on it is basically, I will do things that change the world, and if I can't do something or I won't do something, I leave it to other people. That's generally my focus. Like, I get up every day and I add value and I try to change people's lives and be a good leader and all these things. But if that's what I can change.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the rest of it, I can't. With anything going on in the world, like, if I get really, really frustrated, angry about it, either like do something with it, do something about it, or focus on what you can do.
Exactly, absolutely. I think the Dalai Lama's got a great saying about this. It's like, if you're worried about something and there's something you can do about it, why worry? If you're worried about something and there's nothing you can do about it, why worry?
Right.
And when I read that, I was like, yeah, it's genius.
Yeah.
Really. Because either there's something you can do about it, and then in which case don't worry about it, or there's nothing you can do, in which case you're just wasting energy worrying about it.
Just got to remind our lizard brain and our monkey brain that it's all good.
God, we haven't even got to the whole B.E.A.T model stuff yet. But there we go. Never mind.
I think we're gonna continue focusing on the routines, and then we'll give everybody a link to the B.E.A.T model if they want to check that out more.
Yeah. Sure.
Rebounding. What's the thing with rebounding? What is it?
Again, whenever I tell people that, they think it's about relationships. It's not. It's basically a mini trampoline. And again, it was one of these things that someone mentioned, and a few people mentioned it in my kind of search of high-performing individuals. And I immediately went out and bought one. And I bought like kind of the best one I could get, and which is a Bellican rebounder, in my opinion. And what it is literally you jump up and down on it. And what I love about it, there's so many things I love about it, but it really, first and foremost, it moves the lymph fluid in your body. So the lymph fluid has got 4 times as much volume of that than you have blood. But unlike the heart, which pumps the blood around your system, the lymph doesn't have a pump. And effectively, it's the sewage system for your body. And so the only way it really moves is with deep diaphragmatic breathing, like your pranayama and all of this, or through exercise. And so first thing in the morning, you've been static all night pretty much. You want to move that around. You want to get that flowing. And by jumping up and down on that for like 10, 15 minutes, I kid you not, you will wake up so much easier. At the end of that 10, 15 minutes, you'll be more awake, especially if you have some music going. I normally have my headphones on. I've got some integrated headphones, which are all MP3 in there, not Bluetooth stuff.
I'll tell you what my song is.
What's that?
Shoot to Thrill with AC/DC. That's my song. That's my get ready to rock song.
Yeah, I've got different songs, I guess, for different things, but often there'll be a Michael Jackson in there, or a Rocky soundtrack, or something like that going on. And yeah, bouncing up and down on that. It does obviously burn some calories. It helps with strengthening your core. It helps with your balance. It helps kind of getting your body warm in the morning without it being too taxing. You can still kind of be holding, say, like if you're reading your goals, you can be calling them out. That movement will create more emotion in your body. I've got a whole video on my YouTube channel talking about the 10 reasons to rebound. If people want to check it out, it's the Thought Gym. So youtube.com/the Thought Gym. And then I've got a bunch of videos on there and all sorts of things, but one of them is it's about rebounding and all the benefits. So I'm a big fan. I've been doing it for about 4.5 years now, pretty much every day. certainly every day that I'm at home.
But you do it. After meditation.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've kind of dabbled around. Sometimes I've done it before and then meditated, but generally I will do the meditation first because that I'm just kind of in a calm, relaxed state when I wake up, and then I'll move and do the stuff. But there are different ways to do things. I mean, like the whole point of yoga was to get you ready for meditation. So therefore you're doing an hour and a half of exercise before you meditate. So yeah, I mean, there's different ways, but I just find once I've done the rebounding, I'm kind of not that keen to kind of sit around for 15 minutes.
That makes sense. And if you don't have one, like, I mean, in Qigong, you have this thing where you just kind of bounce on your heels.
Yeah.
That's the same kind of thing. So, like, is that what you do when you don't have the...
Well, typically when I don't have it, if I'm away somewhere, my whole routine's a little bit messed up anyway, but I might do something else. I might just do some stretching, some push-ups, something like that to get me moving a bit. I did, before I got the rebounder, kind of do a bit of jumping up and down on the floor, but I find that really you don't get anchored, you don't get kind of associated into that space as much as when you've got a physical object there. Plus, it's harder on the joints. It's not as fun to just be like jumping up and down for like 15 minutes on the spot. Maybe you get a skipping rope and you do it, but then that means you can't hold a piece of paper and read any goals that you might want. So, yeah, I mean, for those that don't have one, just move, just do something else.
So you've now gotten up, you're out the door. What kind of habits do you have during the day? Any habits then, or do you kind of just like do your thing?
I guess one of the main things is making sure I get a lot of water in during the day. So I drink between about 3 and 4 litres of water pretty much, or herbal tea a day, which a lot of people might think is a lot. But I don't find that. I find, most people are walking around in a chronic state of dehydration. So you'll almost always find me with a bottle of water close by. And I just sip on that throughout the day. And I have like micro goals of saying, I want this done by lunch. I want this done by 5 o'clock. So that I drink enough water. Make sure I walk for a bit, listen to podcasts.
It's actually what I find the most useful with the Apple Watch is actually the sort of stand-up thing. Like it says, it vibrates and says stand up, and then I'll just get up and I'll probably get a cup of tea, or I'll go for a walk, or I'll just stand up. Like if I'm on a Skype call, I'll just stand up.
Yeah, I mean, I've
really helpful
this whole time that we've been talking.
Have you?
Yeah, so on my phone, on my laptop, because I do sit when I write quite often.
I'm going to stand up now. I'm standing up.
But I have like a timer which I set, and it sets for 25 minutes. And after 25 minutes, it plays Bob Marley, Get Up, Stand Up. And then I will then go, and for the duration of the song, I will either bounce on the rebounder, I'll go and make a cup of tea, I'll go to the toilet, I'll do some squats, I'll do some push-ups, whatever. I'll just do something. Yeah. Because especially if I'm editing a video or I'm writing a blog, I can get trapped in there quite a lot. So I make sure I move. Just moving throughout the day is just like key. Yeah. So even if I spend all day in my flat, which isn't actually that big, and I've measured this when I used to wear one of these kind of Fitbit type things, which I don't wear anymore, but just to see, I was averaging a minimum of like say 12,000 steps a day, which is what I would suggest. I know 10,000 seems to be the kind of bulk standard, but I say just be a bit of an overachiever on that side and do 12,000. And I would find that a lot of those would come from without even leaving the flat. And if they're not coming, then I might go on the rebounder for a bit longer. Yeah.
Okay, so now you've done your morning, you've done your day, you've had plenty of water, been to the toilet 15 times.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you taught me was the sleep routine. So basically, Harry said to me, like, you should install this app called. You're going to tell us what it's called, and then dim the lights. So tell me what you told me about like how to prepare for sleep and get some really good sleep.
Yeah. So again, things don't happen by accident. You've got to look at who has. I used to take ages to get sleep, 45 minutes back in the day, and slowly I've made improvements to my life. But getting a sleep routine is kind of key. And what most people don't realise is that when you're kind of exposed to a lot of light from devices, especially the blue light, it actually stops the release of melatonin, the sleep hormone. by quite a significant amount, up to 25%, just a bit of iPad use. And by doing that, it means it's going to be harder for you to get to sleep. You're not going to have as good a sleep. And sometimes people who go past like that sort of 10, 11 o'clock stage, they've been tired all day, and then they get that second wind because basically your hormones, in short, are all kind of screwed up, and therefore you kind of get the second wind thinking you're not as tired. So the app Flux, which again, the ideal thing is not to use the laptop an hour or two at least before you go to bed, but say you have to. Flux is an free app for laptops which you can just install, and it will know where you are on the planet, and you set it what time you wake up, and it will start to dim the screen automatically. You won't even notice it's going on until, say, maybe you disable it one day and you go, oh my God, it's so bright. So that's one thing I would do. But again, because your brain is active and it's quite stimulated when you're online, it's not the best thing for prepping for going to bed. Dimming the lights as well, just so that it's a bit more relaxed. I often now wear these blue blocker glasses, which are quite funny. So if I'm putting the lights on, I'll make sure I put the glasses on first, which effectively trap out all that blue light. And it really makes a difference to the sleep. I mean, there's so many things about sleep. We could talk for ages, but I decided I got a bit fed up telling everyone. And so I created an online course around sleep, which we can share as well with your listeners, because there's so many things. Again,
what is the link to that?
That will be the thoughtgym.com/sleep soundly.
Sleep soundly. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So let me just check that's the one, but it's the thoughtgym.com/sleep soundly. Okay. But I'll send you that anyway.
So do you track your sleep? Do you wear a sleeping mask? Do you wear earplugs?
Yeah, no to the earplugs. I used to wear a sleeping mask for 15 odd years. When I was 16, I didn't have curtains in my room for whatever reason, and so I got into a habit. It was only in the last couple of years that I kind of moved away from that. I don't really recommend them too much because I don't think it gives your eyes enough space to kind of breathe, and you might find that you get more. I used to get a lot of sleep in my eyes on account of it, and I didn't realise that until I got rid of the mask, and then realised that there was somewhere for the air and the moisture to flow. So I don't have an eye mask or earplugs unless I'm.
So just isolate your room, like just have like really black curtains.
Yeah, you want it dark. You want it slightly cooler, about 20, 21 degrees. So cool enough that you want to kind of go from the light to the bed reasonably quickly, because your body temperature drops overnight anyway. And if you're too warm, then it will irritate things. So you want to get that sleep sanctuary sorted. Again, it's something I talk about in the course, but so many things you can do on a simple level to improve your sleep without costing you any money. I used to track my sleep with the Fitbit. I'm not really a fan of wearing those things anymore for reasons we probably don't have time to go into loads, but effectively the Bluetooth and everything else to have that constantly on my body. But when I was tracking it, it was quite interesting to sort of see, and it can be useful in the beginning to kind of get a benchmark.
I think one of the things, just to everybody listening, so, we're talking a lot about like optimal stuff, like what is the optimal fuel for your body? What is the optimal way to sleep? What is the optimal way to get up? So, if you have the time and you make it important, you'll start prioritizing it. But, basically, one of my coaches back in the day, I went to McDonald's and I was like, so what do I do when I go to McDonald's? Like, if everybody going to McDonald's, what do I do? And she said, buy the best, do the best that you can. So that would be like, just buy the salad.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy the Coke and the Big Mac when you go to McDonald's. You can actually go to McDonald's and you can buy the salad. You can ask for the water.
Absolutely. Do what you can with what you've got. Yeah. And in the areas that you can control them. You can control what goes into your cupboards, but you can control what goes into your fridge. You can control how your bedroom is set up. You can control all of this. So do that. And then on the things that you have limited control over, then just roll with it. Just roll with it, and don't get too pent up on being 100% perfect. eating 100% the right thing, because you'll end up creating more stress. And, someone enjoying a Big Mac is doing more for their body than someone stressed and eating a salad, probably, It literally changes the physiological makeup of the body and how it interacts and digests. So, and that's not to say go out and eat a Big Mac by any means. I would not suggest that.
Well, you'd like to know that the Norwegian Big Mac is actually pretty good.
Is it? I used to love McDonald's. It used to be one of the things that I used to go for.
I do my Tim Ferriss Fatter Day. So yeah. But I haven't had one since I came back, so I don't think I'm going to have one either. I might go to the Pepe's Pizza, the big pizza chain here. It's basically Pizza Hut here in Norway. So
find good pizza.
I suggested that to some friends, and they said, "Can we have some proper pizza, please?" And I was like, "No, I want the Pepe's Pizza." Anyway. We need to focus on one last thing. I know you have a busy schedule, so let's do the Superman exercise.
The Superman exercise?
Yes.
Which one was that?
It's where you start your talk, and it's, imagine if you were a person, what superpower would you have?
Ah, yes, that was it, yes. So, for the networking, when I asked, really imagine that you are a superhero of some sort and what your superpower would be. You mean that?
Yep.
So the reason behind that is that often we have got superpowers. We just don't realize it. And it's a bit fun when I do an ice-breaking thing to ask people what their superpower is. And it doesn't have to be like flight or invisibility. It could be that actually I make people feel really at ease, like instantly, in my company. And just to have a bit of time to think about what is your superpower, because we spend a lot of time growing up being found critical on things. We get this all through growing up. We get all these ticks and crosses, and we focus on the crosses rather than all the ticks on our homework. So we're kind of tuned in to look for the negative, and sometimes that washes away all the kind of things that are uniquely our gifts. And it can take time to find out what that superpower is, but we all have one, if not many more. And spending a bit of time just working that out and seeing what you're good at and focusing on what you're good at and developing what you're good at and embracing what you're good at as well, and not shying away from it, I think is really the thing that we need to be focusing on and sharing with the world that, why we're here and what we've got to offer it.
I think one of the things that I really took away from that exercise, and it's also something that you see in successful entrepreneurs, is that they have this embodiment of what they are creating. They are not really doing it for the money; they're doing it because it needs to be done, and they have this this love for it, this passion for it, and what a lot of people do is they'll go look at somebody, say like, oh. This person did, WhatsApp. I'm going to do a WhatsApp. The problem there is that they are not embodying that. That's somebody else's stuff.
Exactly.
And that's one of the mistakes I made with my first business, the photography stuff, was like it was somebody else's idea. Yeah. And
be uniquely you. I mean, we spend our lives sometimes trying to fit in when we're born to stand out, and then they're not my words originally, but. It's really recognising that, and you said that at the beginning when you introduced how you spell my name. Is that I asked my mum, and I was 4 years old when I changed the spelling of my name from Harry to Hari, and I asked my mum why I did that, and she was like, "Oh, you wanted to be different. You wanted to kind of stand out. You didn't want to just be a run of the mill sort of Harry." And it actually makes sense to spell it Hari because it's actually the first four letters of my full name. So I'm not sure why it was ever Harry, other than everyone else was like that, and that was just the way to do it. And so even at that age, and I remember at 4 years old coming home and insisting that my parents buy brown bread for me because I was told it was healthier back then. And even though I was the only person in my family for my entire life having brown and my parents had white, now I don't eat bread at all. But yeah, just recognise that you're meant to be uniquely you, and don't shy away from that. Basically, I think is the message. You know?
So today you've shared so much with us. What is sort of the best place to go to learn more about habits, routines?
So if
basically the morning routine and all that. Where is that all that information collected?
So the best way to go for getting some content would be the thoughtgym.com. So thought as in thinking. So THOUGHT. So thethoughtgym.com. And the first video there is, once you pop your name and email address in, is about habit change. And it will take you through a series of videos there, and you can learn more about me and some of the teachings. I'm also kind of all over social media. So the Thought Gym, whether that's Facebook or YouTube or Instagram. I do release a weekly YouTube video, so that's the Thought Gym. And that's a good place. If you're directly interested in the sleep course, thethoughtgym.com/sleep soundly. Or if you want to go straight to the energy model, thethoughtgym.com/super energy. So I'll give you all those links, and you can put those in the notes if you want.
Yes, we'll put all those links in the notes.
And more about me is harikalymnios.com. So that's my other thing. But thethoughtgym.com is a good place to start. And you'll get the videos on habit change and everything else there.
Fantastic. Hari, with HARI, it has been a true pleasure, and I look forward to hanging out with you in London.
Thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. And sorry, I would chat for more, but I have another call in about 6 minutes' time. So
you have to prepare for your speaking engagement tomorrow.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
All right, cheers.
Okay, guys, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, please go to iTunes and write a review. We do spend a lot of time putting this all together and having guests, and you writing a review actually means the world to me and my team, and it really helps us reach more people. So if you enjoy this podcast, please support us by going to iTunes and writing a review. Thank you, and bye-bye.
This podcast is brought to you by MrOutsource.com. Outsourcing to the Philippines done for you. Mr. Outsource is a recruitment company matching busy entrepreneurs with Filipino virtual assistants, so you can have the time to focus on what's important.